some of you may know the slogan for Fraser Health. It's better health, best in healthcare. So that was our kind of slight twist on that. As Dr. Gao mentioned, Carolyn and I are also joined by the discipline heads within our region. So this week is Med Lab Week. So we just wanted to wish everybody a happy Med Lab Week. And we're very appreciative of all the work that all our technologists and all the support staff do for us. Just a little bit about the objectives for this presentation. We're going to give a bit of an overview and statistics of our health authority to lay the groundwork. We're also going to be discussing a little bit about what is happening in the different disciplines. So Dr. Shiau is going to be talking about anatomical pathology, and Dr. Karen Young is also present. Dr. Thomas Cavello is going to be talking about hematopathology and transfusion medicine. He is the incoming division head for us in Fraser Health. Unfortunately, Dr. Wilson Young couldn't be here today. He's away. And Dr. Cavello will also be talking about LIS. Dr. Richard Cleve will be talking about medical biochemistry and pre and post analytics, and Dr. Susan Roman for medical microbiology. I'm going to be talking a little bit about medical education at the end and what's happening specifically within Fraser, within UBC Medical School, and we're going to be discussing a little bit about future directions. And at the end, I have some fun facts as well about Fraser. So for interesting statistics, we are the largest regional health authority by population in BC, serving more than 1.9 million people. That accounts for about 40% of the BC population, and interestingly, 5% of the Canadian population. We have 20 diverse communities ranging from Burnaby all the way out to Fraser Canyon, and this includes 6 Métis chartered communities and 32 First Nation communities. We have 12 acute care hospitals and the large outpatient Jim Pattison Center. There's a growing number of outpatient care and surgical centers and 81 long-term care facilities within Fraser. We are the second largest health authority in Canada, and that's second only to Alberta Health Services, which nominally is considered one large one for the whole province. Fraser Health employs 45,000 staff, medical staff, and volunteers. So this is a picture of our whole health authority. Highway number 1 actually connects Fraser all the way from west to east. We have 2 high-level trauma centers. RCH is our highest acuity, and then Abbotsford is also a trauma center of slightly lower acuity. 2 BC cancer treatment centers, Surrey and Abbotsford. We have 3,000 plus acute care beds. 3 major redevelopment projects are happening right now, and we also have the busiest pediatric emergency department in the province at Surrey Memorial. Within Fraser, we actually are divided into different regions as well. So we have Fraser North, Fraser South, and Fraser East. So each of these different regions have a hub hospital. And then we have the smaller to medium-sized hospitals feeding into the hub hospital. We have also centralized regionally within Fraser. So this is actually better for workflow and for efficiency. So RCH is the hub hospital for Fraser North. And what happens at RCH is specialized cancer diagnosis, hospital autopsies, cytology, cytogenetics lab is there, specialized chemistry, and our specialized coag and autoimmune testing is performed at RCH for all of Fraser. Surrey is known as Fraser South, and that's the hub hospital there. So all of medical microbiology is centralized there. Flow cytometry, hemoglobinopathy testing, and tumor markers. ARH has a specialized chemistry done there and forensic autopsies. So we have 30 plus million lab tests per year across our labs. Oops. Sorry. Okay. However, with such a large health authority, we do have some challenges, and this is just across the board at all health authorities in the province. There's a global shortage of MLTs and MLAs. We also are having some problems with new tests being requested by clinicians, but this requires experienced personnel to carry it through. So ideally, we need more experienced techs to help us with that. Space is also an issue. Lab is a regional program, but space is allocated individually by site at the hospitals. We also have a continued growth of the clinical programs, which obviously requires commensurate support and growth of the lab services. So diagnostic testing, we know, is growing about 3 to 5% annually. Some of our hospitals are actually quite old in infrastructure. And so when we want to, improve efficiencies, we find that we have space issues, electricity, plumbing, HVAC, network issues, and middleware. So things that you don't typically think of, but actually make a huge difference and some barriers to implementation. And then also we need maybe renovations as well to redesign the workflow. Lastly, we want to, implement technologies, but that requires resources in terms of, people power and also the equipment. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Shiau for anatomical pathology.
Yeah, so I think part of the goal of this presentation is to share what has been happening in Fraser and what we are looking to do in the coming year. So for the past calendar year, we've been adding a number of immunohistochemical studies that we've previously been sending out either to BC Cancer or to VGH. So happy to have been adding some more specialized tumor markers. We spent a good part of 2022 looking at whether or not it was possible to run an automated FISH for HER2 on our existing platform for IHC. So currently Fraser Health works on Leica Bond 3 platforms. So we did look at working through an automated overnight FISH assay. And we evaluated a number of different assays during that time. There were a few small pieces of equipment that were added, including a new H&E stainer for Royal Columbian Hospital. But the big part of last calendar year was spent trying to convince the region that as we move into our digital transformation for Fraser, which would be the Vancouver Coastal equivalent of moving to CST, Fraser is moving into Expanse. We wanted to take the opportunity to explore whether or not we could help to unify the Lower Mainland on a single pathology server system. So we put forward a business case for CoPath and were able to successfully get it approved for implementation as individual sites go live with Meditech Expanse, which is very exciting for us. Next slide. I don't know if I'm in control of the slides or not.
Oh, yeah, I am. Sorry.
Okay.
I apologize. Yeah.
So the major projects for the coming year, it would be the implementation and build for CoPath as RCH moves to Meditech Expanse, which we're hoping to see happen and come to fruition about 2024. We did look at a FISH platform for running on our existing automated analyzers and actually discovered that the transition to a CISH, a chromogenic in situ hybridization assay, would be more efficient from a tech time perspective. It, however, required us to acquire a new Roche Benchmark Ultra platform, which we are very grateful we were able to partner with the Royal Columbian Hospital Foundation in order to acquire a new analyzer. It has arrived on site, so we're working on the optimization at this time, and then we'll be moving into validation shortly afterwards. And I'm very happy to say that we are, once the HER2 CISH is up and running, our next major project will be moving on to having MMR IHC in Fraser Health, which we have been wanting to have for a long time. So this is definitely on our radar, lots to come in the coming year. Thanks.
Okay, now we'll hand it over to Dr. Thomas Cavello.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Michelle. In hematology, we replaced our remaining Beckman Coulter sites in terms of hematology analyzers with Sysmex analyzers. And what this lets us do is not only install digital morphology analyzers across Fraser Health, so it makes it easier for pathologists to review slides remotely across the region. We can also have the same middleware across all our sites. So previously, some of our sites didn't have middleware, and so this can be very important as we transition to Meditech Expanse, because we won't have the same sort of crosstalk between the old and new systems during the transition period. So that middleware will really help us out. We're replacing our 17 coagulation analyzers So we were previously on a Dago electromechanical analyzer, and so now we are transitioning to the ACL Top optical analyzer. And we are installing 2 new DX Flex flow cytometry units at Surrey Memorial Hospital. So this improves our capability in terms of number of colors. So we have the ability to go up to 13. Currently, we have validated our 10 color. We are validating our 10 color LPD panel that we're currently using, as well as PNH, fetal cell quantitation, and CD4 and 8 subset, T-cell subset testing. So we're supposed to go live with that May 1st. And we also are performing our own ANCA testing in-house starting back in October 2022. Next slide, please. So we are also exploring the implementation of a new rapid malaria kit. So our current rapid antigen detection test has the HRP2 protein, which is sensitive to falciparum malaria, which is a common cause of malaria-related emergencies. But the new kit will be able to distinguish between falciparum and non-falciparum malaria, which will hopefully dispense with the need for slide reviews at peripheral sites, and they can be consolidated to the hub sites that see these more often. And we're also implementing a malaria nucleic acid test at the 3 hub sites, and we are going to move towards full depth on an automated basis on our bronchial wash assessment. So this was specifically requested by our respirologist, and we think this will reduce the workload involved in doing manual 2-part depth and provide additional information for the clinician. Next slide, please. So in transfusion medicine, we've installed 2 IH500 analyzers and 5 Saxo analyzers, and what this allows us to do is remotely result antibody panels. So the smaller peripheral sites can run antibody identification panels, and they can be interpreted remotely by the techs at the hub sites that are a little more experienced with that specialized testing. And CBS is also introducing nationwide. Has also introduced low titer platelets and plasma, so it's already marked for. So that in particular is our Group A plasma for our trauma cases, as well as all platelet units, and so this will reduce the amount of teetering that we have to do in lab. For our tissue bank, we've cleared all observations from our previous Health Canada inspection. So we are registered as a source establishment by Health Canada as we provide tissue to several outpatient privately run surgery centers in the Lower Mainland. We have also revised our outpatient transfusion reaction reporting procedure. So we used to hand patients a form and self-addressed stamped envelope, and often 3 weeks later we get a letter saying, well, I had some IVIG 3 weeks ago and I felt darn lousy. And unfortunately, there's not much that we can do at that point. So we've instead provided a patient information letter instructing the patient to contact their prescribing physician immediately in the event of a transfusion reaction, and appropriate steps can be taken. And we've also implemented a quality assurance program with our operating room for cell saver, so measuring the potassium levels of the gluconate, and just to make sure that cell saver is working appropriately. So with the transition into Meditech Expanse at each of the 13 sites, all our type and screens will become invalid at the stroke of midnight for that particular site. So that's been a challenge to work through, coordinating scheduling of outpatient transfusions, surgical procedures, and making sure everything is teed up for the inpatients and emergency patients. We have a new provincial directive for immunoglobulins for secondary immune deficiencies. So we implemented a provincial PPO within Fraser Health that just provides for increased scrutiny of this particular indication. Well, typically secondary immune deficiencies are temporary, so we want to make sure these patients are monitored. So when their immunoglobulins recover, they can be weaned off the exogenous immunoglobulin. We are also preparing for the arrival of pathogen-reduced products coming from CBS. Sorlin treated platelets are coming along later this year, I believe. And we've already started receiving some units of SD plasma or octoplasma. So the products do look a little different, have a bit of a different volume, so we need to inform the clinicians about the differences. And we're also participating in a couple of transfusion medicine related clinical trials, such as the FAIRS-2 trial, which compares which is comparing different approaches to restore coagulation in bleeding patients in terms of, Michelle, I believe that's dealing with PCC versus
Frozen plasma. Yeah, exactly, correct.
Versus frozen plasma, as well as the anti-MBEP study. So typically, the M antigen is considered a clinically insignificant antigen. However, there have been several case reports from Asia of clinically significant hemolysis relating to this antibody. We're doing a trial to see whether perhaps any ethnic differences or other differences that can explain why patients sometimes experience severe transfusion reactions with this antibody. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I should probably mention those are multi-center, so we're just one of several centers for those trials.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're collaborating with several dozens of sites for each study. So we are also participating in initiatives to reduce unnecessary deaths on infants, as well as unnecessary typhus screens. We're also working closely with the clinical units and such things as operating room simulations of bleeding events and the like, just to streamline the implementation of our master transfusion protocol, for instance. With our lab information system, as I mentioned before, we are rolling out expanse throughout our region on a site-by-site basis. So the first site to go live is Eagle Ridge Hospital, and the next, which will happen tomorrow, or actually tonight at the stroke of midnight. We are working towards go live for Royal Columbian Hospital sometime in 2024, which will be the second of our 13 sites. The benefit to Meditech Expanse is it will allow for computer provider order entry.
Great. Thank you so much, Thomas. So we're going to hand it over to Dr. Richard Cleve now for medical microbiology.
Medical biochemistry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
The first thing we had attempted was rolling out the DX1 inventory management system. We did this across the region. It's not been an entirely smooth rollout. We are reassessing whether this is working or not, but we are working on improving inventory management as one of our strategic goals. Like everyone else in British Columbia in chemistry labs, we are in the process of changing all of our analyzers. We've already managed to swap out a Centaur for a DXI 600. Which then freed up an Access 2, which we were able to relocate to Ridge Meadows Hospital, and we have completed the validation at Burnaby Hospital. We are attempting, as part of the Meditech Expanse project, and independently, we are having our third go at middleware. We previously had Remesol middleware just isolated at Royal Columbian Hospital. We had attempted to do a system-wide middleware at Surrey, which did not work very well, so this is our third shot at it. We have been putting out newsletters to try and keep the staff informed. We've had varying success across the regions, but we are trying to keep staff as involved as possible with this. Unfortunately, due to the shortage of blood gas syringes, we have been invalidating many types of blood gas syringes, only to have the latest type then get short supplied. So we've spent the entire year validating multiple blood gas syringes. We have introduced a couple of somewhat new tests. There is a new Bio-Rad HIV test on the DXI, and we're the first in Western Canada to bring that test up. And the Randox beta hydroxybutyrate test on the DXC 700 AU, we are the first one to bring that assay up. Next slide. So the actual middleware rollout is going to be a staged process. We will be starting at the 4 sites where we're actually changing the equipment and adding the automation at those sites as well. We have replaced the ABL 90 blood gas analyzers across the region. They had all become quite old. The mass spec, we are happy to say we finally managed to get going to get our nitrogen generator installed. Our current one was a bit of a dud from the manufacturer and has had repeated requirements for replacement, which has inhibited our ability to actually roll out new assays because it's been so unreliable. We'll also be getting a larger fume hood with a proper dry down apparatus as part of the new equipment at Surrey Memorial Hospital. As we're being able to work up the new analyzers, we're able to move the old analyzers to other sites. Unfortunately, our old analyzers are out of production. And so this was the new analyzers that we want are not in production yet. So we are moving around analyzers to try and stave off the fact that we now have 8 to 10-year-old analyzers everywhere. So on the, okay.
Oh, sorry, Richard. Yeah. You want me to move the next slide?
No, it's okay. So vitamin D will be added to the FHA test menu. We'll be doing that as soon as we move to the new analyzers. And we have been trying within the last month some new utilization management of volatiles, which so far preliminary looks like we're managing to reduce the amount. And this is creating, of course, a tremendous amount of manual labor for our part. So we would like to get this reduced safely. Next slide. On the PPA side, one of the challenges, we have a virtually entirely new PPA technical team within the last year. We've had a lot of turnover, but we have managed to achieve our many-year vision to finally get PPID across all sites in the entire health authority. And with the most recent one being Peace Arch Hospital, which finally went in March. These have been largely held up due to infrastructure things, due to network availability. And in fact, we've gotten to the point now where we've been on it for pushing a decade at Surrey Memorial Hospital. We're about to go on to our 3rd analyzer because the first 2 have already died from old age and redundancy. So it's quite exciting, but it's also been a lot of work. So even though we've now managed to get out, we're continuing to do that work. We've had a restructuring of point of care testing. Previously, it was under each of the divisions. Now we've brought point of care as a standalone within the pre-PA area, with expertise still residing in the originating area for that point of care device. We're also working towards centralizing shipping out. So we've already centralized mitogen referral. So all the approvals are done at Surrey Memorial Hospital, but in time we'll do all of our shipments through Surrey Memorial Hospital as opposed to Royal Columbian and Surrey Memorial. Next slide. And so once again, with the PPID, our challenge is at Eagle Ridge Hospital. We basically have to roll it out again because of the move to Expanse. So we're not quite done with that project. And as you said before, at ARH, Delta, and Surrey, they're old enough now that we already have to upgrade to a new PPID device, which seems to be a once every 5 year or so process for those of you who haven't started far down your PPID route. We are piloting a call center for patients. We already have one for booking purposes. We're trying to expand this up a little bit. And we are also trying to make use of sample tracking. So the courier has this ability. This is a contract that's done across the country. Remarkably, no one is using this. So we are actually the first ones to be trying to work this up with the tracking of the boxes, which we're hoping will help with any lost samples or trying to figure out where specimens are during the shipping.
Great. So thank you so much, Richard. And last but not least, Dr. Susan Roman for medical microbiology.
Thank you. Well, I guess they've gone with the leave the last for the best, or leave the best for the last. Okay, carrying on. First, I just want to do a call out to my 6 other Fraser Health MMB colleagues who are all integral to the functioning of such a large and complex microbiology lab. So the Fraser Health Microbiology Lab has been undergoing a gradual centralization. For example, in 2013, there were 3 regional microbiology labs at Surrey, Abbotsford, and RCH. And they were gradually incorporated into Surrey Memorial Hospital. And so in 2015, we were a one-site microbiology regional lab located at Surrey Memorial Hospital. And that enabled us to become a truly 24/7 hour lab, microbiology lab in 2015, 2016. So yes, we're the largest hospital microbiology lab in BC. And Ken Tan, my IT consultant, says that we're among the top 3 largest in Canada. All righty. You already know we serve 3,000 acute care beds in Fraser. We get about 300 admissions every day throughout Fraser Health. We have about 25 MLAs and 50 MLTs. Our casual MLT pool is drastically too small at only 6. So anyone who wants to come over to Fraser Health, it's beautiful out here. You're welcome to do so. Let's see, what else can I tell you about Fraser Health Microbiology? Well, I guess for 2022, routine bacterial specimens are probably about 250,000. If we include all the, COVID testing and everything, that would probably be over 6,000 specimens. I can tell you that we probably have about, in a given 24-hour period, we'll have 40 to 50 positive blood culture, sets of blood cultures positive every day that we have to deal with. So that gives you a bit of an idea of the volume of testing. And we are no strangers to, growing coccidioides or brucella or pseudomallii in our lab. So we have important safety precautions because just the massive volume and interesting cases we get. And of course, we also provide teaching for BCIT, for the UBC medical microbiology residents and infectious disease fellows. And we also are involved in the UBC IPAC fellowship program. Next slide, please. Okay, so just looking back at the last few years, well, everything was COVID, of course. And it was a big step for Fraser Health because essentially at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, we really had no capability to do any kind of COVID molecular testing. And so we very rapidly had to step up and finally, well, very quickly, actually developed COVID testing on 4 different platforms, the Roche Cobus, the Gene Expert system, the C-Gene system, and the Quant Studio. And I can tell you, well, you want to know what our peak COVID testing performance was in September 22nd, 2021. We did, in a 24-hour period, we did over 6,000 COVID tests in one day. We've also become DAP accredited for whole genome sequencing and for COVID whole genome sequencing with DAP. And that was great being able to use that on-site sequencing and with the management of our COVID outbreaks in acute care. Next slide. We've also, with COVID, if there's anything good about COVID, it's that it did manage to improve our access to molecular platforms. And so now we transitioning to what other assays we could do on these platforms. So we've implemented a molecular platform for syndromic testing for meningitis and encephalitis. We've also, well, as all instruments, they don't last forever, and so we've had to transition to new blood culture instrumentation. So we chose the Bactioler, the Virtuose. And we also were very lucky in that when the Surrey lab was constructed, there were, we called it the shelf space. There was unfinished space that was just left, which you see on the left there. That's why our lab doesn't really look like that anymore, but there was some space left untouched to accommodate future expansion. And of course, it didn't take long before we needed that space. And so we've been involved with expanding that space into more microbiology space. And we're very fortunate that it went to microbiology. I feel for all the other disciplines, sorry. But it's greatly appreciated. And so we've been able to expand our blood culture footprint. We're constructing more offices, more specialized rooms for PCR for molecular testing, and phase 1 of the work has been completed. Next slide. So going forward, well, we'll just continue on expanding our molecular platforms and looking to do, as the whole province is doing, moving to a molecular platform for the stool infectious diarrhea panel. We'll be starting pneumocystis jirovecii PCR testing. The expanded respiratory pathogen will be performed on a molecular panel in-house for fall 2023. And the expansion in that shelf space is continuing and is soon to be finished, where we've added additional rooms such as a biocontainment testing room. And that is it just seems like it's been a never-ending change. I like change, luckily, but of course it can be challenging. And some upcoming projects we have are 16S and ITS. It would be great to bring that technology in-house for improved turnaround time. We now have a PhD scientist who can help us with some of these things, and also an STI vaginitis molecular profile as well would be good. So there's lots to look forward to, lots to do, and it's great for the Fraser Health patients, what we're able to do.
Great. Thank you so much, Susan. We did save the best for last because you guys were the busiest and had the most happening in the last few years. So thanks so much for that. Now we're just going to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about medical school education in Fraser. So as many of you know, the UBC Medical School is truly a provincial program. What is known, there's a 288 positions right now. There's a northern program with 32 students, an island with 32, southern and Kelowna, and then Vancouver Fraser has 192 for a total of 288. So I happen to hold the position right now of a student affairs assistant dean role. So I'm part of the Vancouver Fraser because we've cohorted the students by last name, but I've also the designated Fraser person as well. So student affairs is actually an arm of the medical school that is a bit arm's length from the curriculum. We're supposed to provide a supportive, confidential, safe space for students so they can come and to us for emotional, academic, financial support. We also talk a lot with them about career planning. Recently the CARMS match, so we were providing support for the yet to be matched students, and also celebrating the successes of those who matched to what they wanted. We're also promoting and supporting Indigenous students, Black student support. So we basically are embracing diversity. And so within what's new this year is that within Vancouver Fraser medical cohort, we now have a designated Fraser medical cohort. It is still considered part of larger VFMP, but we now have 32 students who came in this year, and they actively chose to pick the Fraser medical cohort because in their third year, they're going to do all of their clerkship rotations exclusively within the Fraser Health region. What we're trying to do is, also do more CBL. Clinical skills currently is actually delivered a little bit in Fraser, but the intent was that we were going to also deliver CBL, more clin skills, but that's just going to take a little bit more time. So currently it's going to be all of their third year clerkship year, and every incoming year is going to have a Fraser medical cohort dedicated. So what we did is we held a couple events this year for this Fraser medical cohort. The intent is that we wanted to build community early in Fraser. This is even before they come in for their third year. This was what the students wanted. And what they've shown in the studies is that, where people train is often where they end up working. So we're trying to hope to train in Fraser, work in Fraser, and eventually serve in Fraser and work there. So at RCH, we actually had a lot of attendings coming out. They came and they spoke a little bit about what was their path in their training, why do they like working in Fraser, what is the best part of their job, what are some considerations or the not so great aspects of their job, and then what do they project as, the term now is called changing workforce of their field, so that students know what they're getting into should they choose to apply for that field. And then we also had a similar event at Surrey, and there's been a lot of positive feedback for this. I should mention that we're also hosting events within Vancouver. This is through the mentorship program. And I should have put a slide up here because we have a QR code. If people want to get involved in the medical school, there's a shadowing database. There's a mentorship program in big groups or one-on-one, and also the opportunity to get involved in events such as this. It's very low stress. You just come and talk, and there's some food, and the students are very interested and will ask you questions. We also want to encourage people to maybe sign up for flex projects. So Genevieve and Dr. Mike Nimmel also have this QR code, or you can contact me as well. So we want to promote basically lab medicine within the UBC Medical School as well. So there's an expansion of the UBC Medical School. This was announced pretty recently. So for phase 1, which is the admission for this spring, we're adding 18 new positions for a class size of 306. 4 of them are going to go to each one, 4 is going to go each to Northern, Island, and Southern, and then 6 additional positions to VFMP. And then the following year, next year, we have another 22 additional spots. I would just like to highlight that for now, these 6 additional positions to VFMP and the 10 additional the following year are all designated currently for the Fraser medical cohort. So that's kind of interesting. And the other thing that we're trying to do within the larger VFMP to create a sense of community, there's talk that we might be cohorting those students a little bit more because the Fraser medical cohort has worked so well. Sometimes you can get a bit lost with that within that huge group, right, of the large Vancouver Fraser. So what they're thinking, there's talk that they might develop these academic learning centers. So and it's kind of similar to U of T, where each of these academic learning centers, they develop a bit of a personality themselves. So, one of the groups might be more sporty, the other one might be more into nature. And then what we could intend is like have a little bit of, camaraderie, but also competitive, with sports teams. So it's try to, develop more of a community within the UBC Medical School. Yeah, and the other thing I'd like to mention about the medical school is that according to the admissions dean, by the time we're done the expansion, we probably are going to be the largest medical school in North America. So that's what he told me, which I think was quite interesting. We have some redevelopments that are happening in Fraser. There's the Burnaby redevelopment, the RCH redevelopment, and there's going to be a new Surrey hospital as well in Cloverdale. That's supposed to be the first virtual hospital where your first touch point may be virtual, but it will also have inpatient beds. So there's quite a bit happening in Fraser. So yeah, just a few fun facts. We're nearing the end of the presentation, but this is what I learned, that the Fraser River is actually the longest river, 850 miles. And if you stretched it all the way out, it would span the distance from Vancouver all the way to Regina. It actually houses the sturgeon. So we have in the Fraser River the largest population in Canada of sturgeon. This is a fish that survived 2 ice ages. So it's a tough fish, and it can get really huge, up to 12 feet long and live for up to 100 years. At the end of 2017, they actually caught a sturgeon that they think is 100 years old. It was weighing 600 pounds. We are also the largest sockeye producer in the world. That comes out of the Fraser River as well. So there's a picture of that huge fish. It's actually kind of endangered. So it's only catch and release that they release that thing. And if you have time this summer and people are looking for things to do, you could add this to your bucket list. There is this website, 19 things you have to do in Fraser Valley before you die. I'm not really sure why they couldn't think of one more for 20. 19 is an odd number. However, and I was told recently that that is a picture of the Othello Caves, but it is closed currently due to the floods. But there's other things to do, wine tasting at Chapel, alpaca farms, canoeing. There's also honey mead, which is a different type of wine instead of the grape-based. And lastly, the Chilliwack Tulip Festival is opening up on April the 19th. It's the largest tulip field in Western Canada. There's 7 million tulips planted there with over 30 varieties, and they get nearly 50,000 visitors per season. So you actually have a timed entrance. But it is pretty fun, so check it out if you have time. Anyways, that's the end of our presentation. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask us. And thank you for having us.